Hey everyone, how's it going? It's Matt here. Today just doing an impromptu video, very simple, just talking to the camera, but I wanted to discuss some of the preparations that I've made in order to travel to Texas in order to shoot the PRS Rimfire Nationals match that is now, as of time of filming, just about a week and a half away. I am very excited for it because this is probably going to be the biggest rimfire match that I've ever shot, and this is also my first time flying with my rifle and match gear, so that's kind of why I wanted to document how I've prepared for it for anyone interested. But I do have to give a disclaimer. Obviously, don't rely on some random YouTube video to tell you how to travel with firearms. Do your own research. Regulations and laws always change. But I did ask some guys I know who travel often on they fly often to matches to give me some tips of how to have everything go smoothly and not get delayed in any sort of way because of some silly oversight. So I did implement what they told me into my method here, and there's basically going to be two checked items that I will bring my rifle and match gear. The first item obviously is the rifle case, and the second item will just be a larger luggage that will have my match backpack as well as some other gear in that. So again, two total items to check: rifle case and a luggage, and that will be sufficient in order to bring all my rifle and match gear to Texas so I can shoot the match. Now, you will notice when I go through everything, you won't see any spotting equipment. So my tripod, my binos, as well as my bino or my tripod plate, I guess, that I usually rest my binos on, I actually handed them over to a buddy who's driving down to Texas because he must be a little insane. But he's driving to Texas, so he offered to take some heavier or bulkier items for me. So I gave him all my spotting equipment because the last time I saw him was like a month ago. He lives out in the Toronto area. But that's the reason why you won't see any spotting gear. In hindsight, I definitely probably could have fit all the spotting gear myself, but again, I hadn't started packing at that time, so I gave him all that stuff just in case I couldn't fit it easily. But again, in hindsight, I probably could have. Anyway, I thought I would just share how I have everything packed and what I'm going to bring. So we'll start off with the rifle case, because that's probably the most important. Now, this rifle case I've had for a couple of years. The first while, probably the first year I had it, I didn't even use it because I just bought it because it was on sale and it was a good price. But this is the V800. It's from Pelican, but it's part of their Volt series. And the V800 is the largest rifle case in that series. And I've been using it quite heavily more often now. And the reason for that is since I've been shooting matches in the States, when I cross the border, I do need to have the rifle locked in a case, so I've been using this and it's worked out really nicely. Now, when I open this up, the first thing you'll probably notice is this hideous foam, this hideously colored foam. And the reason for that is obviously this is not the factory Pelican foam that came with the case. That is long gone. I used it for some other projects and stuff. When I've been traveling to the States more recently for the matches, I actually had this thing lined with some egg crate foam here. So I had a few panels of this egg crate foam without the thick middle foam, which worked quite nicely because I can just throw things in and didn't have to worry about how I oriented it. I could just throw it in, close the case, and it was fine. But since I'm flying and we all know how baggage handlers can sort of throw your stuff around, I decided I want some properly cut foam to better protect my rifle inside the case. So I looked online at some prices for some replacement Pelican foam, which honestly were reasonable. But the thing with replacement Pelican foam is it gives you all the pieces for the case. So it gives you the lid foam, and there's like 3 layers of foam in the body of the case. I didn't need all the foam, I just needed the middle one that you cut. So this was substantially cheaper. I went to a local upholstery repair shop, and they conveniently sell upholstery foam in basically any size and thickness that you need. So I spec'd out the proper size for my case. It's 2-inch thick foam that I needed to replace. And they also did have different densities to choose from. I did bring a small piece of Pelican foam so I could compare the densities. They had soft, medium, and firm. The actual Pelican case foam was between the medium and the firm densities, and I ended up going with the firm density, which is again a little bit harder, but it's still really good. The actual quality of the foam is actually quite nice because it's upholstery foam. It is nice, but it's not memory foam, so if I press my hand down, it doesn't leave an imprint. It does rebound immediately, which is what you want for this type of application. All right, I did move the camera. Hopefully you can see a little bit better what's going on inside the case. You can see the rifle there and some accessories. I have made a few changes to the rifle setup for this Nationals match. If you follow the channel, you probably will have seen, or you may have realized, that this is sporting a new scope. This is now a Razor Gen 3 that I just received last week. I actually had this thing on order since probably July. I got a certificate for it off of a prize table and I put it in order almost immediately, and it took Vortex Canada a few months to get them in stock, but I finally got it. I did use it quickly just for a club level match and I really like the glass, so I am going to try and use it for Texas. I did have to wait for it to arrive before cutting out the foam because I did want it fit for the Gen 3. But anyway, the other big change on the rifle is that you may notice here, I don't have the tuna can. Oh, sorry, I don't think it's in frame. Let me just double check. There we go. So I don't have the tuna can barrel tuner on the rifle anymore. And the reason for that is because I'm traveling to Texas. The tuna can looks like a suppressor, as silly as it sounds. I do get comments all the time asking me what suppressor it is. Obviously it's just a barrel tuner, so legally and technically, yes, I can bring it to Texas. But again, this is my first time flying with firearms. I just want everything to go smoothly. I don't want to have to try to explain to some border agent that it's not a suppressor and deal with all that nonsense. So I decided to just remove it. But it did change the weight and balance of the rifle significantly. So my buddy was nice enough to make me some custom weights here that hopefully you can see on the front of the Arca rail. So my Arca rail extends out past the fore end, which created this little shelf. So I took that opportunity to have these weights made up. These are just some 1/4-inch steel plates, and they were made to be stackable. I ended up using all 4 that my buddy made me, and they just attach through the screws on the bottom side of the Arca rail. This added about 1.25 pounds weight to the front of my chassis, which balances out the rifle quite nicely, almost just as good as when I had the tuna can on the end of the barrel, because the tuna can is like a solid chunk of steel that weighs almost 1 pound exactly. So this works really nicely, and that's what I'll be running for the Nationals match. You can see, again, as I mentioned, the foam is cut to fit the rifle with the Gen 3. If I put it back in the foam here, you'll see it fits pretty well. Now, the cutting in the foam isn't perfect because I just did it myself with a box cutting knife with the blade all the way extended, but it worked well enough. You will notice maybe that I do have some cuts in the foam that is purposely extended. The extension of the scope cut here is for the sunshade, so I can fit the Gen 3 here if it's sporting the sunshade without any issues. And the other cut that has been extended is the barrel channel. Without the tuna can, the barrel ends about here, so it gives me enough room to insert the rifle into the foam if I am running my barrel tuner in, later matches. At the top of the foam, you can see that long cut is for my cleaning rod. This is, I believe, a 40-inch carbon fiber cleaning rod, and I wanted to bring that along with me just in case. And on the other side, if we swing around this way, you'll see the cutout for the bolt. I do prefer to travel with the bolt outside of the rifle because any border agent inspecting the rifle can easily see that it's not loaded or whatever. So the bolt's in here and it has its own little dedicated spot. This first section or cutout here is most notably for my bipod. I basically just cut it to the length of my SkyPod, which is my main bipod of choice at the moment. But I didn't want to have a dedicated slot in the shape of the SkyPod just in case I wanted to use another bipod or whatever. And I made it large enough to also throw some other small items in here, like my shooting sling for offhand stages. I have like a bore snake, my safety mag block, and my Voodoo bolt caulking tool because I do decaulk my bolt when I transport it, so I have to recaulk it before putting it into the rifle, and this tool is fantastic for that. Going on to the next two cutouts in the foam. These are both the same size. I sized them to fit my magazines, and obviously since the Voodoo takes AICS mags, they also fit my centerfire mags, and it's deep enough where I can put 2 magazines into the foam here without any issue. Again, this one's the same size. I have another mag, so I have 3 in total, and I also realized that my rangefinder fits very nicely into it as well. I also have a little Apple AirTag in the case. I figured might as well just throw one in the case if I had one, just in case I wanted to track it or it gets separated from me for any horrible reason. And I have one last cutout right there, which are just a few simple scope accessories. Obviously the sunshade, as I showed before. I don't generally use the sunshade unless I need to these days, but I also have a pair of these Defender flip-up caps for the Razor Gen 3, just in case I get to a match and it's raining. I can pop these on and keep the moisture off of the scope. So that's basically the rifle case. You will notice that the windage turret does stick up from the foam a little bit, probably by about an inch or so. I'm not too worried because there's a lot of foam that will surround the scope when the case is closed. There's probably about 2.5 inches of foam underneath this yellow layer, because this case is quite deep, so there's a lot of foam underneath the rifle already, and the lid to the V800 is quite thick. Hopefully you can see that there, and it's also entirely filled with foam, so I'm not too worried about that windage turret sticking up like that. You can see, or maybe you can't see, let me put the camera up. It has already indented the foam, so as the foam compresses, it might leave a mark, but I'm not too worried about that. The case closes easily enough around it. And one last small detail I thought I would show you guys is the eyelets for the locks on the V800 have a steel sleeve inside them, so they should be a little bit more durable. It's not uncommon for these eyelets to just be completely ripped out of Pelican cases just from rough handling. I'm not sure, maybe the new Pelican cases also had the steel sleeve, but I know for a fact the old ones, it was basically just a hole drilled in the plastic. All right, so that covered the first part of how I'm gonna bring everything down in the rifle case, but the second part, as I mentioned, is the remainder of my match gear that will go into a separate luggage. Now, I did watch a couple of videos from Americans, and a lot of them say to put your ammo in the same case as your rifle as long as it's not loaded in the mags or in the firearm itself. However, in Canada, it's actually different because you can't put the ammo in the same case as the rifle. So if you want to travel with your rifle and ammo, they essentially force you to have 2 checked items because obviously your ammo has to be separate. So I have to bring 2 checked items anyway, so I figured I'd make one larger for all my match gear, and then my carry-on will be for my personal items and clothing. But anyway, starting off with the ammo, I'm using another Pelican case. This thing I've actually had for probably over a decade. This is a Pelican 1120. And again, I had this for a long time. I hardly ever used it. I just have a thing for buying Pelican cases when they go on sale, apparently. But this thing fits ammo quite nicely. Hopefully you can see that there. This is actually 2 so 12 boxes of these SK ammo boxes that are double stacked. And you can see the height of the boxes is perfect with the lid, so the lid foam will keep it all very secure. And again, this is the 1120, and this will be locked with, you know, some small padlocks. I also forgot to mention, I will travel with a trigger lock on the rifle and obviously some padlocks on the outside of the vault case. And then I'll just have my match bag as it usually is in the luggage as well. So when I get to the match, I can just pull this out of the luggage and it'll be ready to go. Just going through it, I guess, for those of you who are interested, this side pocket is actually where I usually hold my ammo. I usually use these 1040 Pelican cases to hold my ammo. I might actually bring one, actually now that I'm thinking of it, I'll probably just bring an empty one so I can transfer my ammo from that the larger Pelican case into here, so it's a little bit more easy to carry around at the match. So I'll have one of those 1040 cases in here just empty. The other side is my toolkit. So this has all the bits I use along with my Fix-It sticks and the torque limiter. Of course, there's a random shell casing. As a rimfire shooter, you find 22 cases everywhere all the time. Now this pocket is usually where I have my binos in transportation, but as I mentioned, my spotting equipment is with my buddy. But at the bottom of here, I have just a little pouch with some extra admin stuff like batteries and pens and chamber flags and whatnot. This top pocket here usually has my rangefinder, which you saw was in the rifle case at the moment. The first large pocket has all my dope management systems. So this is my dope card holder. I have some dope cards to actually write it on. Got all my pens as well as a clipboard. And finally, in the main compartment, this is just where I keep my shooting bags. So my primary shooting bag is the Armageddon Schmedium in heavy fill. You can see this was originally one of the Area 419 bags that had the fabric panels on it to use with their plates, but I don't have their plate and I just removed the panels myself. So it's now just like a regular Schmedium, just Area 419 branded. And lastly, I have my Arca-Rail mounted plate system from Grey Ops. This is a Grey Ops plate with their flat bag on it. So pretty straightforward, that's basically it. But anyway, this is my plan as to how I'm going to bring all my match gear and rifle down to Texas. I think it's going to work out pretty well. I took a lot of advice from other shooters that have done this many times, so I'm pretty comfortable with it. But if you have any recommendations, I'm all ears. You know, I still have some time to change some things up, although the foam is already cut, so I can't really change anything for the rifle case. But a week out from leaving, I'm quite excited. I did take a little bit extra vacation so I can stay in the Houston area after the match a little bit longer, just to make a little vacation out of it. So again, I'm very excited for the trip. Hopefully I can upload this video before I leave, which I'll do my best to. But any videos after this will probably be coverage of the national match, so you can look forward to that. But anyway, that was all I had for this video. Hopefully I see some of you down in Texas. Take care, everyone. Cheers.